This was an example, a perfect example of listening to spirit. So I had gone to a conference on holistic education because that was my field. And I met these two Native men, and they were looking for money to bring the presenter to the reservation. And I went back and I found a whole lot of money in the federal grant book. And so I called the Bureau of American Indians to try to find these men. And nobody knew who they were. So I got a hold of the head of the Bureau of American Indians, and I explained to him what I wanted. And he says, well, my brother's into holistic education, give him a call. So I did. And he says, we're using your book already. Will you come out and work with our teachers? And I said, sure. I knew nothing about Native American culture. I hadn't been exposed to it. All I knew was that we had taken their land, etc., etc. So I went out there, and when I got off the plane, I felt like I was home. It's hard to explain it, but I just started to cry in the airport. I mean, tears were just streaming down my face, and I didn't understand it. So they took me to the teachers, and at the time, I had a cancerous tumor in my neck. And I had asked them if they had any medicine men, and they said, no, we don't have those anymore. So in the middle of the talk, they said, the old man's here to see you. And I go into quite a bit of detail in the book. Long story short, he put his hands on my neck and the cancer was gone. And that got my attention. And from there, I had to do a sweat lodge, and I just moved from one ceremony to the other. And I began to walk the Lakota way. And the teachers back then, in the early, it was in 78, they had just gotten their ceremonies back, and they were rough. I mean, they were hard teachers. People think sometimes I'm a hard teacher. I'm easy compared to what I went through. So that tumor, which most people would go into fear, etc., but that tumor changed my life. And when I met Grandpa, who became my teacher, it just was everything to me. It's adopted is the wrong word.
Okay.
It's hunka. It's a hunka ceremony, and it means they make you a relative, which means you actually become Lakota. And yes, I was. At one point, they called me out there and said, come on out, we're going to have a party for you. And I said, well, what do I bring? And they said, wear something nice and bring your credit card. And so in the process of a giveaway, because you do a giveaway when anything special happens to you, whether it's a birth or a graduation or the person walks the rainbow bridge, you gift everybody that attends that. So yeah, and I had no idea that's what they were doing until years later. But I began to be taught by those people. And I'm not going to name their names because it's called name dropping, and you don't use an elder's name without their permission or unless they have passed on. In the Native way, the Rainbow Bridge is a way to express the fact that the people walk into that place where their elders and relatives are waiting for them. But it's an expression of not dying. In other words, the whole indigenous native doesn't talk about death. It talks about the person is still in the trees, in the air, in the birds. Sometimes people say the eagles took them to the sky. So there's different ways of expressing it, but it's not a horrible thing. It's a beautiful thing for the person who passes. I'm a hollow bone. Spirit speaks through me, but I don't take responsibility for that. I do honor myself for being willing to listen and to do what I'm asked to do. But I haven't done anything except reflect back to people who they are. And they're all beautiful. Now, when I went out to the reservation with my very white skin, I was not accepted. In fact, I was called a washishu, which is a fat eater. And I was told not to go any place on the reservation without a native with me. I had never felt prejudice. I didn't know what it was. And I got a really big dose of it. Not from the elders, but from the common people, and even some of those that were considered ceremonial. And when I danced, I was the only white person out there dancing. And I didn't fit in. But Spirit wanted me there, so I was there. Oh boy. There were so many profound moments for me. My vision quest was incredible. Remembering that in another time, recent time, I had been Lakota. Being able to understand a lot of the language. Sundance, which is so sacred, you don't even talk about it hardly. I did mention a little bit in the book, but during Sundance, I went to a place that was beyond the sun, a place of absolute love and bliss. So that was important to me. Grandpa taught me so many things, along with the women, and it was just a remembering and an understanding, and what I had forgotten, they not so gently reminded me of, but that was okay. Because I asked Grandma one day, why does Grandpa treat me like this? And her comment was, because you're worth it. And so today, in today's world, if someone is a little rough on you, you walk away and find someplace else. But Spirit told me to stay, so I stayed. Lakotas don't discipline, especially children. But if you are doing something right and someone near you is doing it wrong, they will yell at you, not the person that's doing wrong, because they feel like you know you're doing it right, and so therefore your feelings won't be hurt. Where if you criticized or yelled at the person who was doing it wrong, it might destroy them and they might walk away. There's I remember once when one of the relatives out there went to where Grandpa kept a lot of his sacred objects. And they stole them and pawned them. And when it came Sundance time, this person showed up. And Grandpa took that person into his teepee in an honored position of taking care of him, which would not be what would happen in the white world. I mean, if someone does something to you, you shun them, you walk away, you're afraid of them, you gossip about them, you talk about them. But not in the Lakota way. In the Lakota way and the Hopi way and all the different indigenous ways, you know, gossip, criticism, shaming are not things that you do. In other words, the 7 Lakota, I don't want to say rules, but perspectives are very similar to the 10 Commandments. And so if someone's hungry and you have food, you give them food. When they come to your house, you give them the best bedroom. You offer them coffee or water immediately. You find out what their favorite foods are from someone, so that's what you serve. And so it's an honoring thing. It's boy, you know, after walking this way for so many years, it's hard to put all of that in a couple sentences. But it definitely is a different culture than we have out here. I had a friend who walked the way I walked, and she was also mixed. And she came here to visit and to do a presentation. So I said, well, how many people are you bringing with you? And she said 1. So I prepared a beautiful room for her and a room for the person that was coming with her. And she showed up with 8 people. And I had put one of my favorite star quilts on her bed. And during that time, she sat on the bed and smoked and burned holes in the star quilt. So I could have gotten very upset, but I didn't, because I knew that what she was showing me was that I was too attached to that star quilt. That's a star quilt behind me. And they're special. Every stitch is made with a prayer. But she taught me lots of lessons that week, because I had people sleeping all over, and they wanted special food. And, you know, I was used to being the one being honored, and suddenly I was in the position of gifting my house and my food and everything. But boy, the lessons I got, they were incredible. Just incredible. And I think when you take the attitude of that, and, you know, I have a cup here, which was in the book that I wrote about Grandpa, why it's called Life is a Ceremony. And he always said to me that you can go do all these other ceremonies, but life is a ceremony. And I think that no matter what your purpose is or what belief system you walk, I think that's probably one of the most important statements you can bring into your heart and live from. You know, South Dakota was a challenge. I had incredible things happen out there. I mean, things that I never imagined. And that's the reason they're in the book. I mean, disappearing, spirits appearing to me, handling hot rocks, and not burning. All of those things. And they're not an oddity. I'm not special. All of those things are open for everybody, no matter where you walk. So in South Dakota, I not only wanted to share how the old ones taught, so that if anyone ran across one of them, and some of the people that they have taught are teaching the same way, that they don't get their feelings hurt, that they understand that this is a training. It's a training understanding that the harder they are on you, the more special you are. The vision quest is just what it says. You're looking for a vision. And to clean yourself, to get all the energies out of yourself, especially when you do a vision quest before Sundance, which is required, so that you're prepared to go in there and pray for the people. But what it is you make 450 ties. Now understand, this can shift from different nations or tribes. This is what I was taught. So you make 450 ties, and depending on who you're working with, they can be of different colors, the colors of the medicine wheel, or they can all be red, and then one for yourself. And those are protection, and what you do is you pray, you smudge and pray, and you put your prayers into these small little red ties, and they're on one long string that's not broken, not tied together. It has to be one long string. So, and then when you go on your vision quest, you put a stick or a branch in the four directions, and you wrap those ties around it, and you sit inside that circle. So those ties hold your prayers and they protect you. When you do that vision quest, you're up there for 4 days or 4 nights, or if the medicine person that's putting you up decides you're to come down earlier, sometimes they'll bring you down earlier. But you're up there without any food or any water for 4 days. And what you're doing is praying for a vision, praying for what you're to do with your life, praying for a purpose, and usually you get it. And sometimes animals will appear like they did for me and gift you their medicine or give you a message. All kinds of things can happen up there. And it's like when you step into that circle, you step into another reality, totally different reality. And you have a chanupa with you. If you don't have a chanupa, sometimes someone will loan you a chanupa, which is what happened to me when I did my first vision quest. And you just sit there and pray. And then when you come out, you don't speak about it for at least 4 to 7 days, and sometimes a year. Because when you share your vision with other people, it disperses the energy and it's less powerful. So you keep it close to you, because that's your vision. It wasn't meant for anybody else. It's not meant to brag about. It's not meant to say, oh, the eagle came to me. So what? The eagle comes to a lot of people. It's a sacred bird. What does the eagle do? The eagle's message is when things get rough, it just flies higher. The crow tries to take it down, and it just flies higher so the crows can't follow it. So when we're in challenges in our lives, We just go higher with our thoughts and our connection to spirit. There's lots of books on that, lots of cards, which I suggest people don't read. I suggest they get a book on biology of animals, habits of animals, and that they actually study the animal. For instance, the coyote's a survivor. The coyote lives in cities. That doesn't make any sense. The coyote moves together sometimes, and sometimes it's alone. But it's very tricky. Very, But so are some of the other animals. We had a fox and a coyote here on our land, and I got so tickled at the fox because the coyotes were chasing it to try to get it on one day, and then on another day, the hounds. We live in an area where people run their hounds. And this fox would get up on logs and walk along the top of the logs and jump off and double back so the dogs and the coyotes couldn't follow its scent. And it was so clever, and they never caught it. But it was a little red fox. And I used to laugh so hard because these animals would be so intent. And the message for me is sometimes just take a different way or move into a vibration or a situation where the frequencies that are trying to take you down can't go to. They can't follow you. And what it does, when it gives you the medicine, is it gives you all of their expertise. And sometimes, a lot of times in fact, it'll also become like a spirit guide, which means that animal will show up and talk to you. And, one of the things that you learn in this indigenous way is that we're all one. And the perspective of that for Native Americans is different, a little different than it is for other people. For instance, people say, oh, we're all one. That tree has that same chemicals, etc., etc. We have to protect it. No, the trees are protecting us. They're providing us with our oxygen. So when a native says, that's my brother, we talk to them. They're actually beings with purpose in life. So it's a little bit different. I always laugh at people because they'll say, well, I always pray to the woods and the water and everything. And I said, you just crossed a bunch of grass. That grass is a plant. Did you ask its permission? Did you apologize for walking on that grass? Would you like to lie down and let me walk on you and see how it feels? So it's a whole different connection, a much deeper connection. Earth will survive. Whether humans do or not is up to us. Yeah, I can. There are two perspectives. One is the family structure. It gets a little confusing, when you hear the different Lakota words that are talking about, well, that's my father, and you're saying to yourself, that's not his father. How did, but when you understand that relationship, so your mother's fathers are your uncles, your mother's sisters are your mothers. I said it backwards the first time. Your father's brothers are your father, and your brother's sisters are your aunties. So it's a very extended community and family. The men never talked to the women without permission. And the women never walk in front of the men out of respect and a few other things. So it's a whole different culture. As far as being called grandmother, you don't call yourself that. There's the grandmother that's part of the family structure, and then there are the grandmothers outside of that people begin to call grandmother out of respect and honoring because of some of the knowledge they might have or some of the stories they might have. And so, but you do not call yourself a grandmother. And it's just not fun, except to your own grandchildren. And then there's a different name for it. You don't. You listen to Spirit, and you don't try to become a grandmother. You just live your life. Life is the ceremony. And that at some point, people may begin to call you that. But you don't take it as a, oh, look, I'm a grandmother now. No. Remember, you're a hollow bone. You're nothing. I give my, like I said, I'm a human being that came here and volunteered for a purpose. And I am something in that. But when it comes to the spirituality, I am what my elders taught me, and I am what Spirit comes through me as a hollow bone and speaks. And both are valid. I remember one of the things that I say because I really respected Grandpa. And I have seen a lot of people wear the big bonnets and so on and so forth. And today I have on a ceremonial dress. But Grandpa was special. I never saw him wear anything except a long sleeve white shirt to cover up his days in the white man's schools, and blue polyester pants and bedroom slippers. And yet he could take cancer by touching. That's humble.
And everyone has that ability.
And other people would be all, and that's okay if you need it. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying that there comes a point where you realize that it doesn't make a difference. So I think that the other thing I'd like to say about South Dakota is I experienced through ceremony and through some of the elders that taught me, and some were medicine people who were not elders. Grandpa, of course, was an elder, and they really shifted me into a different reality. And it started me on the reality of going to other countries that I talk about, where, the things I saw and experienced, if I had not had the preparation in South Dakota, I don't know how I would have reacted. I have no idea. So I am grateful. Yes, South Dakota and the Lakota way saved my life and gave me a life.